Hi guys, Nada here, and in this video I'm going to build a brand new PC for my son, Luca. Now Luca is such an amazing little dude. He does so well in school, he is the best big brother in the world, and he's always so thoughtful and so caring and so kind, and he actually never asks for anything. So I really do think he deserves to get just a huge present this Christmas. So he already has a gaming PC that is still working well, and the specs are not that bad, but as you will see later on in this video, there are some issues here and there, and he can definitely use a proper upgrade. And I'm going to upgrade his whole setup. So in this video, I'm going to build his PC, and then in the next video, I'm going to put up a whole gaming desk in his room and add some peripherals, add some RGB, and just upgrade his whole battle station. But let's check out his current PC first. Let's begin. His current PC has an i5-10600K, 16 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 2080 Super, so it has pretty decent specs from a few years ago, but it's also been having some issues lately. So the top fans would just randomly stop working sometimes, but then work completely fine other times. And I couldn't really find the exact reason why that's been happening, but I do suspect the motherboard is probably causing it. And the Gigabyte software is just being really frustrating with these particular parts. So the all-in-one cooler display is always either stuck on loading, or it rotates the image for no reason, or it just shows half of the image, and the rest of the RGB in the PC is just impossible to sync properly. And even though there is absolutely nothing wrong with his Phanteks P360A case, it is time for something that's a bit bigger and a bit better. Now, he really likes the PC that I built for myself last Christmas, so I'm going to do something similar for him, but then in black instead of white, so it matches the rest of the setup I have in mind. And I'm going to use the same Corsair 5000T case, but then in black. And that is a really good case with a ton of space to work with without being excessively large. Plus, it has a ton of RGB, which is what matters the most to kids anyways. Now, I have an Intel-based system, but I'm going for an all AMD build this time around. And since he uses his PC mostly for gaming and some light schoolwork, the Ryzen 7 7800X3D should pretty much be the obvious choice, since it's really fast in gaming and it is much more efficient than Intel in every possible way. But my 7800X3D is currently being used for benchmarking, and I do have a spare Ryzen 9 17950 X3D, so he'll just get that one instead. And since Luca doesn't really need any specific motherboard features, the only things I had to consider when picking a model were size and design. So my first choice was the X670E Master from Gigabyte, but the extended size doesn't fit well with that vertical cable cover, so I went with the Aorus Elite instead. Now, I don't really like the design of the top heatsink for the M.2 slot, but I can just remove it and use an SSD that comes with the heatsink, like this 2TB Corsair MP600 Pro, which also fits the whole Corsair theme of this build. Plus, I'll add another 2TB SSD under the heatsink so he can install a ton of games without having to worry about space. Now, I also have a Corsair model right here, but for a secondary gaming SSD, it doesn't really matter which one you go for. Since I'm using an X3D CPU, I wanted to get an AMD Expo memory kit and something that is DDR5 6000 rated to avoid any issues. Now, a good value 32GB CL36 kit is probably the reasonable way to go, but I had this 64GB CL30 Dominator Titanium kit from a previous build, which is definitely an overkill, but it looks great, it'll just be a little bit faster, and it will integrate with the rest of the RGB so well. And speaking of RGB, I thought this would be a great opportunity to use the IQ Link kit that Corsair sent over a few months ago, but I never got around using it. Now, the whole Link ecosystem is just meant to sync up all your hardware perfectly using one single software package. And more importantly, it is supposed to save you a lot of space and a lot of cable management, because you only need to use one very tiny controller with everything else nicely daisy-chained. So you can connect up to 14 devices on this tiny little controller, 7 on each side, which should be enough for pretty much any build you have in mind. And it is definitely more than enough for the build I'm doing today. So the cooler already comes with fans pre-installed and connected, and you basically just have one cable for the whole all-in-one cooler going to the controller. And I also replaced the front fans of the case with these QX Link fans that have RGB on both sides and easily click into each other, so you again only need one single cable for all 3 fans. So I basically removed this many cables from the back and replaced them with one single cable. And I also added one fan in the back of the case that is going on the second channel of the controller. So for the cooler, front 3 fans and 1 rear fan, I have 2 cables total, which is really cool. For the GPU, I went with the RX 7900 XTX Aorus Elite, and it is a huge performance upgrade over his previous card. It is one of the fastest GPUs that you can currently get, and they're actually selling for about half the price of an RTX 4090, so it was an easy choice, plus it does look really impressive in a large case like this one. I also used the included GPU bracket that you connect directly to the motherboard to prevent sagging, which a card of this size definitely needs. And when it comes to the power supply, for this particular build, a decent quality 850 watt power supply would be just fine. But I'm going with one that I already have, which is a 1000 watt Corsair RMX shift model. And the whole thing about the shift idea is that it has all the connections on the side of the power supply instead of the back, which makes it a bit easier to swap cables around in case of future upgrades. But what is also very important for this particular build, the shift comes with a lot of PCIe cables, while many other power supplies don't. So this GPU needs 3 single 8-pin connections, and the iQ Link controller needs a single 6-pin connection, bringing a total to 4. I mean, you can get away with a few split cables, but this is better and it just looks nicer. And last but definitely not the least, I added LC100 triangles to the build as well, because that was one of the things he really liked about my PC. So they actually look very similar right now. And now that the PC is done, I do have a few things that I really want to mention. So this was my first time to use the iQ Link system from Corsair as a whole, and I do think that it shows a lot of promise. So all the fans are connected to each other nicely, the all-in-one cooler pump and the cooler fans are nicely connected and daisy-chained as well, so you are left with one single cable. And as I said before, you have a lot of space in the back, and you also save a lot of space in the front because you suddenly don't have cables coming out of the all-in-one pump, and you don't have to use a single chassis fan connection on the motherboard, except for that tiny little CPU fan one. And with one single software, you can control the RGB effects, the fan speed, and almost everything around it, including your peripherals, RGB accessories, nano leaves, Philips lights, and so on. So I just love the whole idea around it. But my main issue here is that it's not backwards compatible with older iQ hardware, only the new Link hardware. So the case, for example, still has a hub and a controller in the back that you need to use, so you can control the LED strips on the top and on the side of the case. And you actually need to use both, so the LEDs won't work if you connect them to the fan RGB connection, just that side little one. And the LC100 triangles require their own controller as well. And of course, you cannot connect the LC100 to the case controller, nor the Link one, and you cannot connect the case LED strips to the Link controller, nor the LC100 one. So you still have to run and power up all 4 devices in this particular build. Now, I do believe that the situation will improve when Corsair launches more Link-compatible hardware and more Link-compatible cases and accessories, but for now, with a full build in this 5000T case, you should really expect to be fully without those extra controllers and extra cables just yet. But I really do like the end result, and I know that an RGB heavy build like this one is not for everyone, but there is a reason it is so popular, and I know that my kid is going to absolutely adore it, which is what matters to me the most. But let's see how it performs. So I tested a couple of his own favorite games like Fortnite, Counter-Strike, World of Warcraft, Assassin's Creed, and so on, combined with a couple of games that I usually benchmark, but I don't necessarily want him playing them just yet, at least not for a couple more years, like Cyberpunk 2077, for example. And a 7950 X3D and a 7900 XTX combo really has no problems running any game in this list, either on 1440p or 4K resolution. So whichever monitor I end up choosing, it will be completely fine and it will run all current and upcoming games without any issues. When it comes to thermals, a big 360mm all-in-one cooler doesn't really have much of an issue with a Ryzen CPU, even the highest end 7950 X3D. In a CPU-only workload, it pushes that little bit of heat that the processor creates straight out of the top of the case, and all other temperatures just looked really comfortable. Now in gaming, with the GPU adding a lot more heat to the system, everything still looked very comfortable. So CPU temps, GPU temps, all other system temps were more than fine as well. And keep in mind, this is with the fan set to my default 40 decibels at a 50 centimeter distance, which is what I think is an acceptable noise level for a system under load. But looking at the temps, I'll probably end up tuning it a bit more to be even quieter because there is plenty of headroom to do so. That is all I have for today, but before I go, let's check out the sponsor of this video. This video was brought to you by Seasonic and their Vertex power supplies. These fully modular power supplies are extremely efficient and very quiet due to their fan design and their hybrid fan mode that stops the fans completely under 40% load. They come with a variety of connections for any kind of system you have in mind, including the 12-volt high-power cable for the latest NVIDIA graphics cards. And to wrap it all up, they now offer a nice and cozy 12-year-long warranty. Check them out using the links in the description below. So I hope you really enjoyed this relaxed and not too serious video format, and I hope that you like the build because I know that my kid will absolutely love it. And as I said at the start, I am not done just yet, so in the next video I'll be building his whole desk, adding some accessories, and just rounding up his whole Christmas setup. And if you want to see how it all turns out, don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!